Greetings and welcome, I'm Ash, and this is my review for Titan Souls. Titan Souls, despite what you might think from the name, has little in common with Dark Souls besides the difficulty and the focus on personal improvement. It is, at its core, a game based on pure technical skill that pits you with a single enchanted arrow against much stronger bosses and lets you figure out through failure and repetition where the road to triumph is. The graphics in Titan Souls are 16-bit in style but are rather visually stunning to look at. There are no massive set pieces or complex environments, instead most of the graphics are done through the use of simple but very detailed shapes. It isn't a visual style you see much these days, but it definitely works here. The large environments contrast well with your small protagonist, further enforcing the idea that you are fighting enemies way outside your league. The music does a great job as well, especially when it comes to setting the mood. When you're fighting the bosses, it kicks in into a more upbeat tempo that gets you pumped for the fight ahead, but when you're out in the world, it slows down into a very slow, melancholic tune that keeps constantly reminding me of Shadow of the Colossus. Which isn't surprising, given that you are, after all, a small young protagonist out on a mysterious quest, exploring an unknown land and fighting bosses much larger than you. All of the elements are there. The comparison, however, is mostly a superficial one, since Titan Souls plays a lot differently than Shadow of the Colossus. Instead of climbing all over enemies, you have your bow and a single enchanted arrow. Each boss has one weakness that you need to figure out and hit at an appropriate time, which is a completely simple concept. The trick is that it takes you a little while to fire your arrow, especially long distance, and with bosses usually trying their very best to kill you, it is not easy to find time to shoot at them. Shooting randomly and hoping for a lucky hit is penalized quite heavily because you need to either retrieve your arrow by picking it up, or you need to stand still for a second while you use your Jedi mind powers to get it back. It doesn't sound like a heavy punishment until you remember that the bosses don't stand idle while you do this, they are still trying to actively smoosh you. Outside of simply shooting, you have one more ability on your disposal. A short-range roll that will be your main means of escaping death when the giant you poked in the eye starts stomping around. And that is your whole skill set. You can move, you can shoot, and you can dodge. It looks very primitive at first glance, but the encounters in Titan Souls are designed so well that you can find tons of ways to improve yourself even with this limited of a skill set. While the game starts out simple enough by just challenging your ability to shoot and dodge, soon enough you are going to be required to pull off some tricky shots while having enough presence of mind in the middle of battle to get the boss into the perfect position so you can land the killing blow. And it is the killing blow that is the most unique aspect of Titan Souls. Bosses can kill you in one shot, but on the other hand you can do the same to them, so fair is fair. You only need to do one hit on each of the bosses, but it has to be into their weak spot, no other shot will count. The fact that bosses can die in one hit does mean that pretty much all of them are tough as nails and will require multiple attempts before you can even begin to grasp the strategy behind them. Especially for the later bosses, which require some out-of-the-box thinking. For example, there is a boss halfway through the game which is almost impossible to hit normally, but if you intentionally miss and then retract your arrow through him, you can end the fight within 5 seconds. This might sound like cheating to you, but the entire game is built around the idea that you will figure out the boss's weakness and then exploit it. Luckily, the frustration of death is averted by some wisely placed checkpoints, which will have you fighting the boss again within 10 seconds of your death. It might seem better to simply have you start on the boss itself, but the short trip is a great way for you to cool off and reconsider your strategy before jumping into the fray again. As far as the world is concerned, it serves more as a giant mission hub rather than an environment you can explore, which, to be honest, is a real shame. The place is huge, not to mention really pretty to look at. There are tons of little alcoves that look like they should hold secrets, yet the only thing you will find in them is disappointment. If there ever comes a sequel, a more content-rich overworld would be more than welcome. I have similar complaints about the story. It is told in cryptic clues and little bits of background information, but there really isn't much lore for you to sink your teeth in. Titan Souls isn't even the type of game that actually needs a story, but they went out of their way to include one, so it is kinda annoying that there isn't more to it. Titan Souls also doesn't take long to beat. I believe it took me around 4 or so hours in total, and there is an achievement to do it in 20 minutes. But ending the game doesn't mean you have to be finished with it, as you will unlock a new Game Plus mode with harder and faster bosses, as well as various challenges such as the No Dodge Roll or Iron Man challenge. It is a nice way to extend the game's lifespan by a few hours, but even with all of this considered, I still wish it was a little bit longer, but I honestly can't complain given that you can get it dirt cheap these days. So what exactly is my opinion of Titan Souls? Besides the overworld map being somewhat bland, I don't have many complaints. It is a very compact experience that was made to be as challenging as possible without ever crossing into unfair territory. Through the combination of great visuals, music, and some terrific encounter design, you will spend most of the game in a trance, constantly trying to improve and perfect your strategy in order to bring down whatever boss dare stand in your way. It might not have a ton of content, but what you do get is extremely well done, and for the price you can get it at these days, I would say that Titan Souls is more than worth it. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this, please do leave a like, it ends up helping me a lot, and if you would like to see more, you can either subscribe here, or you can check out the website down below. That one tends to be updated more frequently. With all of that said, I hope you guys have a nice day, and I will see you soon. See ya!